Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I have the difficult task to be the last presenter today. It has been a really long day, and also on top of it, a really, let's say, full of explanation and really, let's say, advanced seminar compared to 2 years ago. So we can really feel that people are really getting into the BIM world. I don't think that there is any necessity anymore to speak about what BIM is. And my goal today is to share with you, let's say, the part 2 of the presentation I did 2 years ago almost, where I came to present a project that was done and built in Middle East called the Mafraq Hospital. And we have been on this project for the past 2 years, implementing BIM, supporting the main contractor and supporting the client. So today I felt like it would be interesting as a presentation to share with you how we do it, what we've learned from it, but also the difficulties, let's put it that way, and how we feel that the economy can move forward. Because again, today we spoke a lot about technology, we spoke a lot about processes as well. The truth is, I agree with everything was said. If you have the combination of processes plus technology plus people, that's just simple. The project will never evolve because you can't change, you can't do something new with an old mindset, just simply. So just to start with, to explain to you for people, because I saw some, I recognize some faces that I've met 2 years ago. We have grown pretty much, we're about 70 people now. So when we presented 2 years ago, we were more around 10. So as you can see, the BIM business is really interesting and evolving and growing up. So what do we do in a nutshell? We did open Itech as a BIM consultancy company, but there is one sentence that actually the previous speaker spoke about. We are turning more and more into virtual project management. Okay? I think it's really important to understand that BIM is not a technology, this everybody said it today, but more a process implementation. So you have to recognize it as thinking of BIM like bringing a CAD manager is not really going to help and not going to work. The BIM, let's say, manager, if you want to call it that way, has to become more a virtual project manager working with your project manager to be able to explain how the project will evolve and also how to control and manage it. Because it's not about standard only. It's more about how virtually you will construct. Again, a lot of my colleagues today explained to you that you are virtually building, and I really love this word, you are virtually building your project. Okay? So if we can do it in the computer, obviously you will be able to do it in real life, and that's really a snapshot of the future. That's exactly how we forecast the things. So how do we BIM? I think that this slide is one of my favorite ones. How do we BIM? We take every bit of information, shake them together, and deliver the project. So let me be a bit more specific on that. We speak, and I think that the center word is interoperability. That's one of the key words of, let's say, a successful delivery. Interoperability just means an interaction and a compatibility of exchange of information between the different, let's say, team member, but also software. You don't have to neglect, the software part either. And the purpose of all of this BIM technology is still for you to be able to build your project, which is often something that I haven't heard too much today, is the output of it. We still need to print some paper at some point of time, and the output has to be done in an old fashion, unfortunately, where we still have to give set of drawings to be able to print our shop drawings and everything. And this is something that we are facing quite often, where the client hears that it's not necessarily easy to manage big file, to print out all of this file, and to be able to have a good output like we would do in CAD. So I remember that, again, during the course of today, we spoke about parallel processes, such as having a BIM process, such as Revit, and also having a CAD production in a 2D fashion. This I fully agree. I don't advise to do that. And that's also a little bit part of the explanation that I want to do today. Also an important word that is really in bold is the data. We will speak a little bit more about what the data is. And data is as simple as taking the information that is hosted inside your BIM model, but you definitively need to understand that data is beyond that, is being capable of attaching information to your BIM model through external application / external tool. So most oftenly what we are doing as Itech and what we advise our client, and I think that you would all agree to do that, is we're having a BIM model that really necessarily carry the information of the geometry, and in parallel to that we're managing everything through external database that can be scattered in a cloud solution and shared with everybody, with all the teams. So today, as I said earlier, I'm not going to speak too much about BIM as what BIM is. You all know what it is. I'm going to share with you this case study called the Al Mafraq Hospital. Small summary or small reminder. We speak about 290,000 square feet hospital, about 10 floors, 10 levels with 2 basements. It's a project done by SEHA, the Healthcare Authority of Abu Dhabi, and Abtur Layton and Murray & Roberts are the main contractor. So we have been contracted with Abtur Layton and Murray & Roberts, and our job, or let's say our role on the project, is to be able to mobilize the team on site and help the main contractor to deliver the project, let's say, with the BIM technology, which again, I don't like this word anymore, it's almost becoming a buzzword. We are delivering an integrated project, okay, with all the data management, meaning all drawings are extracted out of this 3D model, but also all quantities, and all of your planning is linked also into the geometry. The main goal and the main purpose of that is to be able to deliver, as you know, the 3D, 4D, 5D, but mainly and most importantly, to be able to pass it over after to operate your facility. We speak about an hospital, so you can imagine that it's extremely important to have a high level of information, a high level of detail, not only for virtual coordination, but also for future expansion and future modification on the project. Okay? So, again, I'm going to paraphrase a lot today. They were part of my presentation as well, so I won't take any copyright, but that's the type of view that we like. We don't want really pretty picture anymore. We don't want 3D Max rendering. What we want is coordination view. We want to be able to select and acquire information through the geometry. So this is, for example, a snapshot of a Navisworks file, and this is the main building. So as you can see here from the construction site to the main building, this is a quick snapshot of the model as it is. That's only the main building. I didn't put the peripheral building. And where I want to lead you into is to speak a little bit about the file management. For this specific project, we're using Autodesk Revit 2012, because the project was started 2 years ago, as I mentioned. And what I wanted to emphasize a little bit, because again, I didn't hear too much about that today, is the file management, okay? A lot of time when you start your project, it's really important for you to understand where you want to go. Again, a lot of people have spoken about that today. What do you want to output from the model? And then you can set it up properly in the early stage. In this specific project, we know that we have to deliver an as-built BIM model. That's pretty much the requirement. Now, the way that we have broken the project was included and not limited to how many subcontractors we would have, how many floors we would have, how much or how the services would be done also within the hospital, to be able to subdivide the project and to be able to use it really as a coordination tool. And what we do often is we're exchanging files within each subcontractor. And the purpose of exchanging the file directly just facilitates for the subcontractor to build on top of an existing model. And again, I think that we would all agree that if we want a good coordinated model, it definitively makes sense for people to get we spoke about that a couple of minutes ago outside during the break, to be able to exchange, native file, at some point of time, to be able to have access to the information. There is a big debate that we could speak about, but I don't think it's the proper time, is the difference between working file and, let's say, exchange file. And that's something that, again, let's say due to the different configuration that we're facing on this project, we end up exchanging native files. So, not to lose any of you, this project is about now around 18 gigabytes, okay? It has been subdivided around 160 files, okay? And we have about 150 sheet files where we are outputting all the print, all shop drawings and all sheets that are extracted about, and we have about 150-ish files to do this management. The main reason that we're having so many files is pretty simple. We are capable of deploying different team size to be able to print or to output different type of information, and we are also capable of giving and sharing type of file per subcontractor, which each subcontractor is obviously inheriting his own sheet files where he is capable of outputting and generating all of his 2D content. Okay? Now, speaking about split, this is a good example of a snapshot. This one is a snapshot of the ground floor. again, I want to emphasize that I'm trying to go against the idea of it's easy, how to break a file. I split it per discipline, I split it per floor, and eventually I split it per department. The truth is, you have to analyze who is doing what on the project, and then understanding the team, you would be able to then split and organize how the workflow of your project will circulate. For instance, this project was splitted. I'll give you the easiest example. The structural file is only one file. We are capable of managing everything through one single file. No need to split, no need to do anything. The main purpose is the entire team was together on site with the main contractor. Other files such as interior layout. Interior layout was divided per floor and even at some point of time per area because it was different subcontractors. So you really have to have this thought process. Otherwise, you end up having a wrong setup. And then when you try to exchange the information and exchange the data with people, the flow of communication gets broken. And that often comes on top of saying, oh, it's difficult to implement BIM. But again, it's not difficult to implement BIM. It's just difficult to set it up properly because it asks you to know what you want before you make it. And I think it's really a strong statement saying you need to understand, and again, to paraphrase you, you need to understand where you have to go before you can make it happen. This is a little bit more of a zoom in the technical model, because you have to understand that we're building an LOD 500 on this project. That's how they call it, LOD 500. I'm sure that you are familiar and you've heard about that, but that's the idea of having pretty much an as-built condition. And here, as you can see on this snapshot, we are already implementing all of the medical equipment, all fixed furnitures, all of the socket, electrical socket, pretty much every bit of information you can imagine. Now, going to this slide, I made it really simple today, as I mentioned, because I didn't want to focus too much on the BIM side, but more on the file management and what we can extract out of it. So this slide, as you can see, it's how we are capable, again, by splitting and subdividing our file, to be able to put some focus on specific area. The goal and the purpose of the integration all of this data management is to pretty much be capable of saying, I would like to have let's say a snapshot or a small view of a specific part of a building, okay? And the way we're trying to do that more and more in project, and I'm pretty familiar, even if with projects such as the new midfield terminal with CCC, is the idea is to be able to say, I'm querying a part of the building, okay? You select the part of the building not in your file, but in, for example, an external database, and that's this database that will query the according file to be able to load them for you. That becomes really important. Let me reiterate that. Back in time, most of the people would open a 3D model to be able to access a specific area of the model. Now, on big scale project, that becomes really difficult to do that. So what we're doing is we're subdividing area that you have to agree upon when you're organizing and splitting the project. And what you do is you call all of these files as soon as you need to see a specific zone. Okay? That facilitates and minimizes the amount of, let's say, hardware requirement to manage the project. That also facilitates the coordination efforts onto the file itself, and that gives you fast result and fast production. There are a lot of people, let's say that, let's call them in our client range, that are oftenly complaining about the size of the project, how big it becomes. That, for instance, some people, they come in the morning, switch on the computer, and wait about 10 minutes to open a file. This type of configuration, they are really time-consuming, because if you take a team of 10, 20 people, multiply by 10 minutes for each, you are losing a lot of manpower per day. So the idea of by reducing all of this file size just allow you to keep having good performance and avoid all of this waste of time by managing the file itself. Because again, you don't want to turn a stage about your technology, obviously, and you don't want to turn a stage saying, okay, to have BIM, I need big hardware, I need big software, I need pretty much everything to be changed. No, it's really important to understand that managing the data is the key point of having a successful delivery. And we have been implementing this kind of thought mindset by being capable of subdividing project, even if at a level of a room, basically. So Just imagine that you want to visually coordinate a room in 3D with every discipline, interior, architecture, MEP, pretty much everything, all discipline in one room. The idea is rather than loading all the model, to be able to load directly the room itself. Okay? Why do we think that way? Not only it gives you good performance, but we can even tend to turn into mobile platform doing that. So technically you can do all of your coordination without having to carry big file size, put that everything on your server, and then being able to access them remotely on mobile device or let's say smaller application. Because we've noticed that if you limit the BIM implementation to your production channel, that becomes really, kind of a big constraint. The idea is to be able to share the model, and as you mentioned earlier, to try to give snapshot, to try to invite people to be curious about how to utilize that. And as soon as you start to speak with the shareholders, all of the, let's say, client side, they're not going to have big capability, big capacity. We really benchmark ourselves thinking that if the iPad can open it, pretty much everything can open it. And I think I saw many presentations today. A lot of you are having iPads. So I think that if it opens on that, we have a winner solution and we have a good solution. Okay? So going further, bringing you into the room, we spoke a little bit earlier about all of these LODs and all of this level of detail and all of this level of presentation. You see here, for instance, that's pretty much the level we are going on this hospital. It will even go a little bit higher because we are still working on all of the medical equipment. But the idea and the forecast that we are putting in place now is even teaming up and creating ideas on top of the project that we weren't necessarily thinking of. For instance, right now we are working with the medical equipment team where they are creating system clash detection. We're trying to find words for that, where basically by placing their own family, they are capable of querying through the family itself if they have all of the energy supplies required for this specific equipment. So for instance, how many sockets do you need for a specific medical equipment? You would be able to query it directly in the room because with the room datasheet, you are capable of knowing how many sockets and or how many free sockets do you have directly. So you see, we're trying to bring all of these ideas of not only using information just for a 3D perspective, but also to use it intelligently and to try to involve every team member of the project, because I can guarantee you that at first when the medical equipment team heard about BIM and LOD 500 and everything, they were a bit suspicious about the purpose and the use of it. But more it passes, more they get on board, more they get involved, and more they get excited about this implementation pipeline, because they understand the profits and the benefits out of it. They can coordinate everything faster and anticipate issues, especially with all of their pendants, to see if all the structural components are well placed and or if the MEP is properly set up. This is another quick snapshot of another room. And as you can see, again, I emphasize on that part for this project, we're using Revit. So as you know, there are limitations in every, let's say, BIM software. So that's the reason why at some point of time, the representation of the equipment is really limited. And you don't have to over-model your information. Otherwise, I know that we could model everything. I know that everything could be, again, done in 3D. But what you have to understand is what exactly do you need out of it? What do you want to do out of it? And are you really going to query everything out of the BIM model or not? Because you have to understand, and that's where I'm leading with this quick output, let's say. That's a sheet for shop drawings. You see, the way we are managing the 3D model and the way it is represented in your 2D is basically the sheet is taking a snapshot of your 3D environment. So it's taking a 3D snapshot inside your room and display it on a 2D sheet, pretty much. So the good side of that is obviously as soon as you update your room, all of your drawings, they get updated. But also the interesting part for us is we're capable of changing visibility parameters to be able to display on a 2D format a more detailed level of information than we display it in 3D. And again, by doing that, you are capable of reaching more management, more information, and manage the performance and the resources of all of your hardware and the project delivery. And again, I know we spoke today about processes, I know we spoke today about team, but it's still important to speak about how much time do you need to achieve that? Because if you spend all of your time, and we all know that here in Middle East, we don't have much time to deliver projects, into waiting to synchronize all of your file, into waiting to load of your project, into waiting to, you know, or not even to crash every day your pipeline, it's extremely important to manage that properly. And we see that more and more and more often. It's even services that you start to think of, how you can audit BIM model to make sure that, you know, they're working properly within your pipeline. That's another sheet where, as you can see, we're bringing all together all of the elevation, couple of sections, reflecting ceiling, ground floor, pretty much everything about it. Now, let's move to another part of the BIM pipeline on this project, which is the data extraction. Now, we have two types of data extraction inside this project. The first part is pretty simple. It's straightforward out of the Revit file, where you are capable of generating all of your schedule. Now, generating schedule in Revit is pretty easy and pretty straightforward. I'm sure all of you are aware how to do that, but it sometimes has limitation. Limitation due to a simple fact: you can only schedule what is loaded in your file. Meaning that if you have files that they are based on different XREF and or files that you don't have access at this point of time, the schedule may be corrupted. I say maybe in a way that you don't have a 100%, let's say, you can't be sure at 100% that all of the information is there, which makes sense. If you don't display something, you can't really calculate it. So the way we are kind of driving the data extraction in our office is by having data manager that they come on board with us. So it's something that I've heard again earlier, so I feel like I'm repeating what I've heard today. But at Itech, we have a team of engineer and architect. This makes sense to you, but we also have a team of developer and data manager. They are all database experts, they are Oracle certified, and they are capable of managing the data. We are implementing data manager directly into project in a lot of our big scale projects actually, where at first sight the client is really surprised about the idea of having a developer, but he understands the benefits out of it pretty quickly. As soon as you speak about managing thousands and thousands and thousands of data and thousands of information, the problem that occurs quite often is the client is ignoring all of this pipeline, and at the end of the project, he will inherit a 3D model. Yes, a really nice 3D model. The problem is it will be stripped out of parameters, and there is no way that you can just open your Maximo pipeline and just tell him import project and magic would happen, unfortunately. What you have to do is really get organized in the early stage to be able to understand what you want to extract and how you want to extract it. Now, all of this redundant work, because tagging each and every geometry by going into the element, going into its property, and doing all of this information is really time consuming. On top of it, in our belief, that would be irrelevant to overload a geometry with properties and information coming, from example, from your planning team or from your cost consultant team. The idea is to be able to do the opposite, to have a database where you link all of your geometries, which is coming from your BIM geometry, with their own properties, such as area, volume, material, and all of this information, linking then on top of it your planning information, which is what we call the 4D, obviously, loading all of your costs, but eventually loading all of other type of information, such as description, such as PDF, such as any type of file format you could imagine, to be able to link them all together in an external database. And again, the purpose of this external database is obvious. You can query the database at any point of time from anywhere without having any BIM-related software at some point of time. You can create your own platform, you can create your own viewer and query whatever you want. It gives you faster result, obviously, and it's way easier to access. So for instance, if you would like to have the entire volume of concrete of your project, you will be able to query directly into your database. That would avoid you to have to open, for instance, your Revit model and load your Revit file and then make your own schedule, making sure that you have linked everything all together. So we see that really oftenly. Again, at first sight, it may sound like, whoa, 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 whoa. I want to make a 3D model and extract my drawings. Why do you speak about database? Why do you speak about developer? Are you trying to put more people on the team that they are not really relevant? But the truth is, by having a good setup, and every of us told it today, by having a good setup up front, we catch up and we save a lot of time after. And that's often, unfortunately, what it's not done. So now to wrap it up, because I think it's important to understand that the beautifulness, and that's a word we use at the beginning, of the interoperability between all of the platform and between all of the, let's say all of the software provider, is they are allowing people like us, all of us, to be able to develop our own application on top of their platform. Most of the time they are offering the capability and the access of API, which allows developer to create and extract information in a specific way and in a specific order. So all of this API, this is, for example, I took a snapshot that we are doing onto another project. That's not from Mafraq, but that's another project. The idea is we have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of geometry to manage. We have to manage them in a proper way where you even have to put, physically tag with a label the geometry. So imagine just for a minute that you are tagging elements that they are not even in your country. So for this specific case, we speak about a facade. So the facade is designed here, it's coordinated here, then it's going to be fabricated in China, then it's going to be shipped here, then it's going to arrive here, it has to be scanned, it has to be controlled, and everything is linked into this information. If you don't label it properly in your BIM model, obviously, down the road, it's not going to be manufactured properly. And to make sure that you avoid, when you speak about 1,000 elements, to make sure that you avoid the human mistakes, the only way to do that is generally developing routine, developing tools on top of the existing platform to manage this specific, case for you. And as you can see, we have implemented quite a lot of tools per project, because generally we are not developing software, we develop tools that they are extremely project-based, that at the end of the project they pretty much die with it, and that allows us to develop more rapidly, and it's less, let's say, user-proof, but more efficient for the project. So that's pretty much, what I wanted to share with you today about, the expertise, how it has evolved. And if I want to conclude on this project, the project is moving really well, I would say that the BIM acceptance has been extremely strong, and there is a simple reason to that. The main contractor and the client, and this I heard that earlier as well, the main contractor and the client, they were extremely, I would even say, straight to the point, saying that BIM is going to be used on this project, not CAD. We don't have that much AutoCAD license on this project, mainly Revit and all 3D platform. And I believe that it's one of the reasons that the project becomes successful. They all had their struggle. They all had their time lapse where they had to learn how to use the tool. They all had some point of time, some kind of issues about how the pipeline is, because again, they are used to a certain pipeline and now they have to deliver it in another way. But they all agree now that without all of this BIM, without all of this coordination and virtual delivery, they would have struggled way more than on a regular delivery. Now, there is one thing that is all the time difficult for us, is to be able to quantify. I was trying to get some analytic about the project. It's still kind of an ongoing project, and when we speak with the main contractor, they are all agreeing, saying, that's better than if we wouldn't have used BIM. But again, it's still difficult for us to analyze, to query, or to quantify the saving on something that technically, virtually, we anticipated. Because when you tell them, if you would have built it wrongly, how much it would have cost, they look at you like, we wouldn't have built it wrong, I believe. So, it's all the time difficult to understand the forecast. But so far, the implementation of BIM on this project is pretty successful. Everybody is on board, and I hope that Abtur Leighton and Murray and Roberts, they will definitively use that on further projects. And we all know that Middle East is really pushing hard on their basic and massive scale project for BIM delivery. So it's really encouraging. And I think that events like today, they are really helping and supporting to create the awareness with everybody. So on that, if you have any question, I would be pleased and happy to answer.
Time for another question. Anything?
How easy
Oh, that's
repeat the question.
yes. So the question was, how easy is it to generate this view specific for each and every room?
Where I'm coming from is clients and the client requiring specific views. I find there are just actually wasting the team's time to doing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So how easy and how useful is it to do something like this?
So again, that's all the time part of the magic. Now, through API, you can automatize this process. So it's true that there are all the time the nice presentation and the reality. The reality is we're capable of generating per room a grid that takes the boundary of each room and generate a 3D snapshot of this element. So by taking this room, yeah, it's a live model. You can have a live model. It's like kind of a crop view of the existing file. But what becomes interesting, because as I mentioned earlier, this is more for coordination, we are slicing a 3D section of the room to export it for coordination purposes. Okay? And that's something we try more and more, because you wouldn't imagine having this 3D view in your iPad to physically update it, you know? And really our goal is to try to, again, demystify, to take a big word, how we can communicate and share the information and involve more and more and more and more people. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah, please.
Hang on, just
I'm just afraid if you break the model, it will lose the integrity after some time. The model itself will lose the integrity after you break it in this way. So why you don't just use a work set, which is a tool
yes.
by Revit?
So I will emphasize that back. This 3D snapshot is an extraction for being able to share a representation of the room. I'll give you an easy example. Why did we do this view, specific view? It's to be able to send it over to the medical equipment people to understand the space layout. Okay? That's all. Pure purpose. As a production pipeline, we don't use that. What we're using is workset, as you mentioned, to be specific at what Revit is. And yes, we're using workset to be able to hide or reveal or load and unload part of the building. So the work process and the pipeline that you work in your file is different than the pipeline that you try to use to share information with others. And again, if I would have given the entire building to the guy working on the medical equipment room, where out of 700 rooms, he would need only 2, that wouldn't make much sense to him either. So what we're trying to say, and what we're trying to do more and more, is finding ways on how we can share and communicate the 3D and the geometry and the information just to more than the group of only contractor, but with the owner, with every stakeholder, with everybody, basically. We're even looking at real virtuality now, real-time engine, to be able to facilitate eventually virtual training, to facilitate and being capable of training your staff. You see, for hospital, obviously, you need to train your staff after. So if you could virtually train them and win or save 2 to 3 months, instead of waiting your building to be physically build, then train your staff. If you could do part of that virtually, that would be extremely useful, I believe.
I just wanted to be clear that this is after design stage. It's not
correct.
Yeah.
All the model you are seeing today is based and done with the contractor, purely on site, actually. So that's an overloaded detail model that you wouldn't detail that much as a design stage.
Thank you.
Welcome.